Today we are going to be talking about something that has been highly requested, and that is my favorite brushes. I've gotten this question so many times and I'm finally here to share it with you. I'm going to share with you all the brushes that I love to use, that I use the most when it comes to my foundation, my eyes, which I think is what most people are curious about for having, smaller eyes, Asian features, all of that, and then also for contour, blush, highlight, lips. I will be talking about specific brands, of course, but I will be sharing why I love each of the brushes so you can go out and know what to look for when you're shopping for your own makeup brushes. You don't have to buy the specific brands or brushes that I have. I want to equip you with my knowledge so you can go out and make those decisions for yourself. Let's get started. First, we have tools for foundation. I love the Beauty Blender. I find that it is such a versatile product, or sponge, brush, if you will, because there is just so much you can do with the Beauty Blender. I like foundations that aren't too heavy but still have good coverage, and with heavier foundations I love using the Beauty Blender because it really helps to blend it out beautifully, and it just doesn't feel as heavy versus when I use a makeup brush, like an actual brush to apply it. If you're looking for other options outside of the Beauty Blender, other face sponges, I really love the one from e.l.f., their Total Face Sponge, which is a little bit more affordable. I also love the e.l.f. one, especially because of how big it is. I feel like I don't have to tap as often because it covers so much surface area. And I also love the sponge from Fenty Beauty. This one I love more for applying liquid products. That's another thing that the Beauty Blender or these sponges are great for, is applying more liquidy, creamy products. So the difference between like the Beauty Blender and the e.l.f. sponge versus the Fenty sponge is I love the pointed tip. It really helps me to get under the eyes and blend out concealer. I also like sponges to set my foundation. If you're working with a thinner liquid foundation or a tinted moisturizer, something that's just a little bit more drippy, I highly recommend this brush from Luxie. This is their Airbrush foundation brush. This brush is really dense, it's thick, it's packed, it's a heavy brush. There are a lot of bristles on here, and I find this helps to disperse those thinner foundation formulas without taking away too much of the product. Next, I have this flat concealer brush. This one is from Royal & Lang Nicole. This brush is really flat and has a nice rounded top. This is one of my favorite brushes. It is so versatile as well. I think that might be the theme in all my favorite brushes, is that they're really versatile. You can use them a bunch of different ways. The funny thing is I don't really use this just to apply my concealer. I use this as a tool to clean up different areas of my face. Of course you can use this to set in your concealer, but I like using this to clean up my brows. Like if I overlined it, overdrew it, then I'll just put a little bit of concealer on the back of my hand, pick up a little bit of the product, and then clean and wipe across my brows. You get the cleanest line from it. And then you can also use this to spread the product out, blend it in. I also love using this brush to clean up my winged eyeliner looks. Swipe it across and you get the cleanest winged line ever. I also love using this to clean up areas around my lips. I don't have really defined lips, so when I apply lip color and it goes over, it doesn't look straight, it's like smudged, I will use this again with concealer to clean up areas around my lips. Let's move on to brows next. So I tend to gravitate towards the Anastasia Dip Brow Pomade. I also like using eyebrow pencils, which doesn't require a brush. So let's talk about the brush that I do use with the pomade, which is also from Anastasia. This is their number 12 brush, and this comes with a spoolie at the end and a slanted brush on the other end. It is the perfect amount of thick and thin. Just the amount of bristles on there really gives you that control. It's not flimsy, but it's also thin enough at the end where you can get really good strokes in and make it look brow-like. Let's move on to eye brushes next. Some of these brushes have stayed with me for years when I first started doing makeup, so I am really excited to be talking about these. Let's start with this one. This is the Real Techniques Base Shadow Brush. This is a brush I've had for forever. This brush is on the fluffier end. It's rounded. The bristles are pretty dense, but it is still really nice for blending colors out. If you've seen my other makeup tutorials, you know that I always apply a base shadow color, one that's close to my skin tone or a couple shades up. This just helps to blend the other eyeshadow colors later, and this is really great for applying that because it is a bigger brush for my eye shape, so it covers a lot of surface area. You can go really quick with it, but what I also really love about this brush is it blends out eyeshadow colors so beautifully. It's really easy, really great for diffusing colors, especially towards the outer rim of your eyes, like towards your eyebrows when you want to make it lighter, not as harsh. It's just really nice for softening any eyeshadow look. Next, we have the Sephora Pro Blending Brush number 27. This is very similar to the Real Techniques brush that I just talked about. It's a little bit fluffier and lighter. It's a bit more flexible. The bristles aren't packed as much. It's not as dense. I love using this brush to apply my transition colors, and those are colors that I would apply towards the outer corner and also in sweeping motions across my eye. This is kind of like a level up when I want just a tiny bit more color, but still really soft and really diffused. This is also really great for blending out those edges. Next, I have the e.l.f. Defining Eye Brush. I have 2 of these, and I've had these for forever. It's been so long that this has now been discontinued. I cannot find it on their website anymore, which is such a shame because I freaking love these brushes. I still wanted to include it in this video and talk about why I love these brushes so you know what to look for. So these brushes have a slanted top. They're pretty fluffy. Usually when I'm doing my makeup, I will use 2 of these. I'll use one for a lighter shade and one for the darker shade. The reason I don't use the same brush for both those shades is because it can start to muddy up your look rather than having it be like a gradient, like a soft blend. So I'll use one brush first, which will be the lighter color. So when I use the first shade, I'll use the slanted part of the brush. Like I'll hold it pretty horizontally. I will hold it horizontally across my eye to apply that color. Then I will turn the brush so that it's vertical against my eye and blend that color out. Oh, and then I have the second e.l.f. brush to apply the darker shade into the outer half of my eyes. I know a bunch of other brush makeup companies sell brushes like this. I know Luxie has a brush like this. The next brush I have here is the Luxie 121 mini tapered brush. And before I talk about this brush, let me just talk about Luxie Beauty brushes. So they actually have a mini brushes set of 5 brushes that work really well for smaller eyes, just really help you to get in there and be precise with applying your eyeshadows. When the brushes are too big, it just gets everywhere. You have less control if you're working with smaller eye space. Let me do a side-by-side comparison for you with another Luxie brush. So this is their Luxie 205 tapered blending brush, and this one is the mini tapered brush. You can really see the difference in size there. And let me just say, just because they're mini brushes does not mean they're inadequate in any way or lower or not as good. Yeah. Anyway, let me talk about why I love this brush. So I use the mini tapered brush when I want to apply a darker shade to the outer corner of my eyes. So first I'll pick up the color like this with the flat brush head, and then I'll pat it on. I will then angle it and then blend out the outer half. So this gives you a really nice smoky look in that outer corner of your eyes. Next, we have the Luxie 141 mini round brush. Again, part of their mini brushes collection. It is very dense. It's very packed. Because it is a denser brush, you can really pack on the color on your eyes. I like to use this in very concentrated areas. It's not for blending out shades. It's not for diffusing color. It's not to soften. This is the opposite. It's to pack on color. You can use this to smudge out eyeliner, to blend out eyeshadows, but again, in very concentrated areas, like closer to your lash line. I really love using this to add shadow to my lower lash line, just sweeping it back and forth. The order in which I'm talking about these eye brushes is kind of the order that I would use it in. I start with the softest brushes and then work my way to the more dense, packed, harsher brushes. And when I mean harsher, I just mean more pigmented, more color. The next brush I have is the Royal & Langnicole Smudger brush, and this brush is pretty flat. It's very dense. The bristles are packed together and they're also shorter than other brushes. The way I use this brush is very similar to the way I use the Luxie mini round brush. So typically what I would do is I would use this brush to apply an eyeshadow in the lower lash line that is a lighter color, a softer color, maybe like a transition color, and then I'll use the smudger brush to apply like a dark brown, a black. This just really helps to add another layer on top. Because it's denser, it'll stand out a little bit more, and you do have a lot more control and precision with this brush because the bristles don't move around as much. I also like using this on the top lash line. I will use it to pack on color, but then diffuse it by flicking it out instead of going like a straight across the lash line. Next, we have the Real Techniques accent brush, and this is a really tiny brush. The bristles are really short and stiff, but it's still really fluffy. I use this brush to apply inner corner highlight. It is the perfect brush for just getting in there right here, and I just have to do a couple swipes across, and it is just so pretty for that. You can also use this to apply the highlight like upwards. You can also use this on your lower lash line. Next, we have the Sigma Winged Liner E06 brush. It is very thin, it's slanted, it's perfect for winged liner. It is really great, especially if you want to do a winged line with shadow products. It lets you be precise, but still have the softness. I also love using this to help me draw graphic lines, graphic eyeliner, because it gives me so much control and handle over where the product goes. So that's it for my favorite eye brushes. Let's move on to contour brushes now. The first one I have here is the Luxie Nose Perfector brush. I love this for contouring my nose. This actually is supposed to come double-sided. This end is very fluffy. It's great for blending. The other end has a flatter tapered brush, and I've had maybe 2 or 3 of these now, and every single time the other end of the brush always falls off for some reason. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure I can just fix it with hot glue or something, but I just never got around to it. I actually probably should just find another nose contour brush, but this is just really amazing for contouring the nose that I can't give it up. Usually what I would do is I would use the other side where it has the flat end to pick up the product and draw the lines down my nose, and then I'll use this softer end to blend it out. Now, because I don't have the other end, I'll just use this side to pick up the product and to blend it into my nose. I do really love this brush because it blends out really nicely. It doesn't leave any harsh lines from the contour. So that's kind of why I love this brush so much. I'm sharing this in case you do want to try this brush out. Maybe they've improved the design, but that's kind of what I look for in a nose contour brush. The next brush I have is the Real Techniques contour brush, and this is a really nice and soft, fluffy brush. It kind of rounds out to a pointed tip, and the pointed tip of the brush really helps me to get in there under my cheekbones and get a nice contour going. If you like your contour to be more defined, this might not be the brush for that. I'm sure you can still achieve that with this brush, but it won't be as easy. For that, I would recommend a more angular, dense brush. This just gives you that soft, diffused look, and I like using this, like I said, underneath my cheekbones, my jawline sometimes, and like around the sides of my face. Next, my blush brush. This is also a brush that I've had for a really long time. This is the e.l.f. blush brush, and I remember I used to have their original blush brush when it was white, and this was like from their pro line, and I was like, I can't believe I'm spending like more money on a blush brush. How far we've come, how the times have changed. I really love this brush because it is just the perfect size for my face and for my cheeks. It just fits there so perfectly. It blends out really nicely as well. It's fluffy, but it doesn't have a lot of movement, so you still have a bit of control over your blush and where you apply it. Next, for highlight, I have this Real Techniques fan brush. I love fan brushes for highlight. It's great for applying a soft highlight, one that's not too heavy, and it blends it out really nicely. I use this down my nose bridge and also the sides of my cheeks. Sometimes if I want to be more glowy, I'll also apply it a little bit down here, maybe like here. So I love the Real Techniques fan brush because if you feel the brush like this from the bottom to the top, you can feel that the bottom is a little bit thicker, and then it does really fan out towards the top. And the top has kind of like a stippling design to it. I have tried other fan brushes before, so let me do a little comparisons to give you an idea of what other brushes could be like in case you prefer something else. I have this brush from Luxie. You can kind of see the size is a little bit different. It's wider, but it doesn't have that stippling design. So the brush is actually pretty consistent from bottom to top. It's not thicker in one area and thinner in the other, but I also don't really like this because it is way too fluffy. I feel like when I use something like this, the highlight just kind of goes everywhere in spots that I don't want it to go. I like this a little bit more stiff on the bottom. And then I have this one. This is from Tarte. This is a pretty stiff brush. It also has the stippling design where it feels thicker towards the bottom of the fan and then it thins and fans out at the top. The reason I still like the Real Techniques one is because it is smaller. It works for my smaller face, I guess. This one is quite large. It's also pretty heavy, so it's pretty dense. So that's a little comparison between these different fan brushes. There's a lot of different types out there. Just find the one that you like and works for you. Lastly, we have a lip brush. This one is from Royal & Lang Nicole. I also got this a while ago. But what I look for in lip brushes is something that's a little bit more stiff, not a lot of movement. You don't really want that when you're lining your lips with a lip product because you want control over where your lip product is going to go. Especially for me, my lips aren't that defined. What I look for in a lip brush is how it allows me to shape and line my lips. So those are all of my favorite brushes, the ones that I use the most, my loved ones, the tried and trues. I hope this answered a lot of your questions. If you have any more, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. If there are any other makeup topics or questions you want me to cover, let me know down in the comments too. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in my next video. Bye!